In this video, it's just going to be a little bit about loops. So this is in MATLAB and it's a fairly basic program, so I'm not going to go over it too much. X is set to a linspace between 0 and 10, and then there's a for loop, and n equals 1 through 3, so it's going to go 1, 2, 3. You'll loop through it 3 times, and then you're setting this other matrix called y, and then the row n in every column is going to be set to the values x to the n power. So you'll get x to the 1 power as your first row, x squared is your second row, and x cubed is your third row. And then we'll plot it. So you can see how that'll run. Right here you get your figure. You have x cubed, x squared, and x to the 1 power. So that's basically what it looks like, basic program, but there's a little bit of difference between loops in Python and MATLAB. So going to Python, this is the same program. It'll do the same thing. So up at the top first, you'll see we have to import numpy. That'll let us do our linspace stuff and our zeros function. And then this matplotlib.pyplot. What that does is it lets us plot things that look like MATLAB, which is really cool that they include that in Python. So we're going to use it. So to do the same thing as in MATLAB, first we'll set x as a linspace, so numpy.linspace 0 to 10. And then we're going to set this variable n to the matrix 1, 2, 3. So that's a little bit different than MATLAB, but it'll make sense in a second. And then y, we have to create this variable ahead of time. So whereas in MATLAB we could just put it in the loop, we have to create it ahead of time in Python. So numpy.zeros, and then it wants to be the number of rows is the length of n, so it'll be 3 rows, 1, 2, 3 rows, and then the length or the number of columns is the length of x. So you want it to be as long as your linspace is. Okay? Then in your for loop, this is where you start seeing differences. So we'll say for I in range of 3, and this range of 3 function takes whatever this number is, and then it begins at 0 and goes up to that number. So I in range of 3 is going to give you loop through once as 0, and then 1, and then 2, but not including 3. So it'll loop through 3 times, but your I is going to be the value 0, then 1, then 2. Okay? And then we'll include this comma, or this colon here, and that lets you know that you're going into your for loop, and then whatever is included in the loop has to be indented. Notice that there's no end. In order to end a loop in MATLAB, you use the word end, and that's how MATLAB knows that you're done with the loop. But in Python, that's not true. The only way that you know what's in the loop is by what's indented. So we're going to indent, and then our matrix y, and then the row I, and every column is going to be filled with x star star n of I. So this star star just means to the power of. So x to the power of n of I. So run through, our first time going through, I is going to be 0. So for matrix y, the row 0 in every column is going to be filled with x to the, and then n of 0 is going to be 1. That's why n has to be a separate value, because we want n to start at 1. So it'll be x to the 1. And then when we run through our second time, I will be 1. So then the first row, or row 1, every column will be x to the second power, x squared. And then last will be x cubed. And then you can see this is where this matplotlib comes in. So we'll do plt, which is what we called our shorthand, plt.plot, and then x comma y dot t. So this thing is just a transpose, and what it does right here is it just lets us plot a matrix, and it'll do each row as a different line on the graph. So you'll see that in a second. And then you have to include this plt.show. This .show is really what lets it actually plot your function. So we'll run this, and then you can see it looks very similar to what we got in MATLAB. You have your x cubed, your x squared, and your x to the 1 power, which is basically exactly what we got in MatLab, so you can see how these are the same. But the differences in this for loop is really kind of this range function is kind of weird. Notice that it starts at 0 and goes up to this number, but not including it. Don't forget to include this colon right here. And then everything that's in the loop has to be indented. Once you stop indenting, that's how you know that you're not in the loop anymore. So that's kind of the main differences for Python as far as loops go. So in the next video, I'll show you a little bit more about plots.